You believe the substance is the problem. It isn't. You believe if you could just stop putting it in your body, stop reaching for it, stop giving in, you would be free. You won't, because the substance was never holding you captive. Your relationship to emptiness was. You have tried to quit before. You made it 3 days, maybe 7, maybe 21 if you were particularly determined. You felt the clarity returning, the fog lifting, the shame receding. You told yourself this time was different, then you reached for it again. Not because the craving overpowered you, not because your willpower collapsed, but because the moment you stopped filling the void with the substance, you had to face what the void actually contained, and you weren't ready. This is why every attempt to quit has failed. You treated the addiction as the disease when it was only ever the symptom. The real disease is your inability to exist in your own presence without anesthetic. The substance is a placeholder. It occupies the space where you should be feeling everything you've been running from. Boredom, loneliness, inadequacy, the weight of past failures, the terror of future responsibility. These sensations don't disappear when you stop using. They intensify. Your primitive brain categorizes these sensations as threats to survival, not metaphorical threats, actual survival threats. Because for 200,000 years, isolation meant death. Purposelessness meant expulsion from the tribe, and emotional pain signaled that something in your environment needed immediate correction. So when you quit the substance and these sensations flood in, your brain doesn't register this as healing. It registers it as dying, and it will do anything to make you reach for relief. This is the cycle you've been trapped in. Quit, feel everything, interpret the feeling as emergency, reach for the anesthetic, experience temporary relief followed by compounding shame. Repeat. The cycle doesn't break because you get stronger. It breaks because you learn to reinterpret what the sensations mean. You have been taught that addiction is about the substance, that alcohol is the problem, that nicotine is the enemy, that sugar or pornography or gambling or whatever fills your particular void is what needs to be eliminated. This is why treatment centers have a 90% relapse rate within the first year. They remove access to the substance while the patient is in their facility. They create an environment where reaching for the anesthetic is impossible. They call this detoxification, and they are correct that the body needs to clear the substance from its system. But the moment the patient returns to their life, to the same apartment, the same relationships, the same internal void, the substance becomes available again. And the void is still there, unchanged, unaddressed, waiting. You cannot eliminate an addiction by removing the substance. You can only relocate the addiction to a different substance or behavior. This is why people quit drinking and start obsessively exercising, why they stop smoking and gain 40 pounds, why they delete dating apps and start spending 6 hours a day on social media. The void finds a new placeholder. The real work is not quitting. The real work is learning to sit in the void without filling it. This is the first principle. Stop trying to quit the addiction. Start trying to tolerate emptiness. When you frame your goal as quitting, your entire identity becomes organized around deprivation. You are the person who can't have the thing. You are constantly aware of what you're not doing, which means you're constantly thinking about it. Your brain doesn't distinguish between obsessing over having something and obsessing over not having it. Both patterns keep the neural pathways active, the association strong, the substance central to your identity. But when you frame your goal as building capacity for emptiness, your identity shifts. You are no longer the person fighting against the substance. You are the person learning to be with yourself. This distinction determines whether you succeed or fail. For the first 66 days approximately, your brain will interpret emptiness as threat. It has no other reference point. Every time you felt this way before, you medicated it. So when the sensation appears and you don't medicate, your amygdala begins signaling emergency. Your heart rate increases, your thoughts become frantic, your body produces the exact physiological response it would produce if you were being chased. This is not weakness, this is biology. Your task is not to eliminate the response. Your task is to stay present while it occurs. This is the second principle. Reinterpret panic as progress. When your body starts screaming for the substance, when every cell feels like it's vibrating with need, when you become convinced that if you don't give in right now, something terrible will happen, you have reached the exact moment where change becomes possible. Not comfortable, possible. The sensation you're feeling is not the addiction winning, it's the addiction dying. These are the neurological death throes of a pattern that has controlled you for years, maybe decades. It takes enormous energy for your brain to maintain an addiction. When you stop feeding it, that energy has nowhere to go, so it manifests as panic. Good. Let it. Sit with it. Observe it the way you would observe a storm from inside a building. The storm is real, the wind is real, the thunder is real. But you are not in danger. You are watching a temporary weather pattern move through your nervous system. It will pass. It always passes. The people who successfully eliminate addictions are not the people with the most willpower. They are the people who learn to reinterpret the panic signal. They stopped running from it and started studying it. You will need a specific protocol for these moments. Not a vague intention to be strong, but a precise sequence of actions that removes the need for decision-making when your prefrontal cortex goes offline. This is the third principle. Build a panic protocol that requires zero thought. When the craving arrives, you will not be capable of rational decision-making. Your executive function will be compromised. This is not a character flaw. This is how the brain works under threat perception. So you need a protocol that bypasses thought entirely. Physical action, immediate and intense. Drop and do 50 push-ups. Sprint up 4 flights of stairs. Fill a sink with ice water and submerge your face for 30 seconds. The specific action doesn't matter. What matters is that it's intense enough to interrupt the panic loop and simple enough that you can execute it while your brain is screaming. The protocol needs to be decided now while you're calm. Write it down, rehearse it, make it automatic. Because when the moment comes, you won't be able to think your way through it. You will only be able to act. During the first month, you will use this protocol dozens of times, maybe hundreds. Each time you complete it, instead of reaching for the substance, you are rewiring the association. Your brain begins to learn that the panic sensation doesn't lead to the substance anymore. It leads to physical exhaustion, followed by the panic naturally subsiding. This is how the pathway weakens, not through avoidance, through repeated exposure to the sensation followed by a different outcome. You have been avoiding the people and places and situations associated with your addiction. This is the advice every support group gives. Stay away from triggers. Remove yourself from temptation. This strategy will fail because you cannot remove yourself from your own mind. And your mind contains all the triggers that matter. The boredom, the loneliness, the sense of inadequacy. These aren't located in bars or in your dealer's apartment or in the casino. They're located in you, and they follow you everywhere. This is the fourth principle. Stop avoiding triggers. Start training in their presence. The Zen monasteries in Japan, some of which have been operating continuously since the year 1200, understood something about human behavior that modern addiction treatment has forgotten. They didn't remove monks from temptation. They surrounded them with it. Monks who struggled with anger weren't isolated in silent cells. They were assigned to work in the kitchen during the busiest meal preparations, where chaos and frustration were guaranteed. Monks who struggled with desire weren't forbidden from seeing beauty. They were assigned to tend the gardens where the most exquisite flowers bloomed. The practice wasn't avoidance. It was presence in the middle of the trigger, because they understood that the trigger itself was never the problem. The unconscious reaction to the trigger was the problem, and you cannot train a new reaction by hiding from the old stimulus. You need to feel the craving and not act on it, over and over, in the actual environments where the craving appears. This will be uncomfortable. When your friends are drinking and you're not, when you walk past the store where you used to buy cigarettes, when you open your phone and see the app you deleted, every fiber in your body will want to either give in or flee. Do neither. Stay, observe. Let the craving move through you like weather. Each time you do this, you prove to your brain that the sensation is not dangerous, that you can feel it and survive, that the trigger and the action are not inseparably linked. This is how the association breaks. You will fail at this several times before you succeed. You will give in. You will relapse. And when you do, you will interpret it as proof that you're not capable of change. You're wrong. This is the fifth principle. Relapse is data, not failure. Your brain learns through pattern recognition. One instance of success doesn't establish a pattern. Neither does one instance of failure. What establishes the pattern is the trend over time. If you use the substance daily for 5 years, then stop for 8 days, then used once, then stop for 16 days, you are not failing. You are succeeding. The trend is toward less frequency, longer intervals, weaker hold. But you won't see this if you're measuring success as binary, either perfect abstinence or complete failure. This binary thinking is what keeps people trapped. They make it 11 days, they slip once, they interpret the slip as total collapse, and they spiral back into daily use, because if they've already failed, why bother restraining themselves? The spiral is the problem, not the slip. When you relapse, you need a protocol for that too. Not a shame spiral, not a conclusion about your character, but a clinical analysis of what happened. What was the specific trigger? What time of day? What emotion were you trying to avoid? What was happening in the 30 minutes before you reached for the substance? Write it down, not to punish yourself, but to gather intelligence. You are studying your own patterns the way a scientist studies a recurring phenomenon, with curiosity, not judgment, because every relapse reveals something about which defenses are still weak, which situations you haven't built capacity for yet, which emotions you're still categorizing as unbearable. This information is valuable. Use it. Then begin again. Not from day one, from the day after the relapse. You don't lose your progress because you slipped. You only lose it if you stop getting back up. The people around you will not understand what you're doing. They will see you struggling and offer the advice that makes sense to them. Everything in moderation. Don't be so hard on yourself. One drink won't hurt. You deserve to relax. They mean well. They're wrong. This is the sixth principle. Ignore everyone who hasn't done what you're trying to do. Moderation is a myth for people with addiction. Your brain doesn't process the substance the way their brains do. Your neural pathways have been carved deep by years of repetition. One use doesn't stay one use. It reactivates the entire network. This is not a moral failing. This is neurochemistry. But the people offering you moderation advice don't know this. They're speaking from their own experience, where moderation is possible. They cannot imagine what it's like to have a brain that categorizes the substance as survival critical. So they will think you're being extreme when you refuse to negotiate, when you say no to situations that seem harmless to them, when you remove yourself from conversations or relationships that threaten your protocol. Let them think that. Their comfort with your boundaries is not your responsibility. Your survival is. You will lose some relationships during this process. Not because you're pushing people away, but because some relationships only existed to facilitate the addiction. Drinking buddies who have nothing to talk about when you're not drinking. Partners who bonded with you over shared dysfunction. Friends who feel threatened by your change because it highlights their own lack of change. These losses will hurt. They're supposed to, but they're also necessary because you cannot build a new identity while maintaining all the relationships that reinforce the old one. Your environment shapes you more than your intentions do. If everyone around you is engaged in the behavior you're trying to eliminate, your willpower has to fight against social reinforcement every single day. That's not a sustainable battle. You need to build a new environment, not by asking permission or waiting for people to support you, but by making unilateral decisions about who you spend time with and where you spend it. This is the seventh principle. Redesign your environment to make the addiction inconvenient and the new behavior inevitable. If you're quitting alcohol, you don't keep bottles in your house and rely on willpower to not drink them. You remove them entirely. You stop going to bars. You find new places to socialize where alcohol isn't the centerpiece. If you're quitting pornography, you don't keep your devices unrestricted and rely on self-control during moments of weakness. You install blocking software. You move your computer to a public room. You create friction between the impulse and the action. If you're quitting any substance or behavior, you make it physically difficult to access while making the replacement behavior easy. You are not strong enough to resist temptation indefinitely. No one is. The people who successfully change are not more disciplined. They're more strategic. They manipulated their environment so discipline wasn't required. The monks who woke at the temple bell every morning didn't wake because they were more committed than you. They woke because the bell rang and everyone around them was waking and the structure of the day was already determined. You need to build that structure. Not someday, now. Decide the exact time you will wake. Decide the exact first action you will take. Decide what you will eat, when you will move your body, when you will be around other people. Remove every unnecessary decision from the first 90 days, because every decision is an opportunity for negotiation, and negotiation is where relapse lives. When your day is structured, when the protocol is clear, when the environment supports the new behavior, you are no longer fighting against yourself. You are being carried by a system that doesn't require motivation. You will know the system is working when the hard days stop feeling like battles and start feeling like weather. When the craving shows up and you observe it without drama, when you can sit in a room with your former triggers and feel nothing. Not because you've conquered the addiction through force, but because you've built enough capacity for emptiness that the void no longer terrifies you. This is what freedom actually is. Not the absence of craving, the presence of self without needing to alter it. You are capable of this, not because you're special, but because you're human. And every human brain can learn new patterns given enough repetition in the right conditions. The question is whether you're willing to endure the discomfort required to build those patterns. Most people aren't. They'll try for a few weeks, hit the panic threshold, decide it's too hard, and return to the substance while telling themselves they'll try again when life is less stressful. Life will never be less stressful. The void will never stop being a void. The only variable that changes is your capacity to be with it. So decide now, not whether you'll quit, but whether you'll build the capacity, then begin.